My name's Lisa Howell, and I'm on the unceded, unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin people here in Ottawa. It's a beautiful evening. The sun's just coming out, and I'm here with Michelle McKay and Klara Redford, and we're going to be talking about Spirit Bear and kindergarten today. So if we could start, just Klara, if you could give us a little introduction about who you are and where you're located.
Thanks, Lisa. My name is Klara Redford, and I am currently located Treaty Territory 13A, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, which is in Mississauga, Ontario. And I am a settler on this land, as well as an immigrant to these lands as well. And I am just thrilled to be here talking about this with you this evening.
Thanks so much. And Michelle.
Thanks, Lisa. My name is Michelle McKay. I am currently located on Treaty 18 territory. I am an educator with the Peel District School Board and also a PhD candidate with OISE or the University of Toronto, and researching how we engage in teaching and learning about truth and reconciliation with kindergarten students.
I just wanted to start out just asking if you could both describe a little bit of your teaching practice and philosophies.
I have been a kindergarten educator for 15 years plus. And so I was an educator in the program before the new kindergarten program document came out and before full day kindergarten came out. So it was a half day. And I was part of a team to implement full day kindergarten across our board. I work in the Peel District School Board. So really, I have been on this journey of reflection and really co-learning with our students as we have gone through this process of really discovering how 3, 4, and 5-year-olds learn best. And through the writing of this kindergarten program document in Ontario, we've really discovered that the way they do learn best is through a play-based, student-centered, inquiry-based program. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I'm a co-learner along with those students, and I truly believe that that's where the most meaningful, relevant learning takes place, when we hand that over to the students so that they really are the center. I am not the be-all and end-all and know-all of everything in our classrooms, and it amazes me all the time when our competent and curious and capable students are able to show me the way, rather than me dictating the way that they need to learn.
And I think Claire and I do a lot of work together. So understandably so, our pedagogy and philosophy around teaching and education and learning is very aligned. I think that's why we kind of naturally connected and enjoy working and collaborating together as critical, reflective partners. I think an important part of a lot of the conversations that we have center around equity and access, and really thinking about who our students are, what their lived experiences are, and how they can contribute and make a difference in the world. So part of the work that we do around teaching and learning about truth and reconciliation and using some of those Spirit Bear resources is that action or social justice piece, equity piece, in the early years. And as Klara mentioned, it kind of comes back to how we view students and what we think the purpose of education and learning is.
Michelle and I were speaking a few nights ago about how so many people don't believe that young children have the capacity to understand what they perceive as complex issues.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've found is that young children can kind of see through all the other stuff that adults put in the way, and can see issues of injustice and inequities quite clearly. Mm-hmm. So and to that end, Cindy Blackstock often talks about how children are the experts in love and fairness. and that we ought to be listening to them and learning from them. So I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about, having worked with kindergarten students for so long, what you've seen yourself about how they understand love and fairness and issues that aren't so complex.
We did a very long inquiry that I never suspected would be so long, that started with some dripping water turning into icicles on our school. And the children were fascinated by it. And so we started really uncovering ice and then water, and where in the world is water. And we started looking at maps and who has access to clean water to drink it, and what about the animals, and we got to start to talk about, justice and injustice. And for a 3, 4, and 5-year-old, that's a very difficult topic, because what they see as just and unjust, when you begin to uncover that with them, they understand that as equal or not equal. But that's not really what we want to get at. We want to talk about fairness and unfairness as people get what they need and what they require. And they really began to understand that. And we began to, do some role play about fairness and unfairness. And once it began to click with the students, they began to really talk about, how is it fair that there are people in our country that don't have clean water to drink? How is that fair? They need it, we have it, why don't they have it? And we began to uncover, aspects of that. And they just felt this huge responsibility to let people know about that. And so we began to create posters and digital media together. And, they really wanted to let others know that this is happening, and, and what's happening to the animals as well. And it's very interesting, because Michelle and I shared a little bit about this in one of our workshops. And one of the questions from one of the educators was, do you really think that this is appropriate for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds? Like, can they really understand this? Do you think it's really appropriate? Are you getting any pushback from parents about these conversations? And it's not the first time this question has been posed. And our response is always, yes, we must have these conversations in kindergarten, because that's where it starts. Our learning must start in kindergarten about these issues. They have a huge capacity for understanding these, and a huge capacity for understanding love and injustice. And they want to seek ways to be advocates for others. They're hugely empathetic at that age and want to be able to advocate that way as well.
What's interesting is I've never had a challenge engaging kindergarten or young students with topics around love, fairness, equity, taking action. They're naturally so inclined to be helpers. They're understanding, the capacity for love is unmatched anywhere else. When you're in a kindergarten room, these young children will be the first ones to greet people and welcome them into the community. So I think I see our job is to really reflect on our view of them and how capable and competent they are, and help develop the skills for them, as Klara mentioned, to be able to take action and address those injustices, and take the skills that they inherently have, and that capacity for love, understanding, take all of that and help them kind of refine it, develop skills, develop the language, develop the understanding to be able to take action and make impact and create change. I think we need to rethink of, and every kindergarten teacher will tell you, especially towards the end of the school year, tattling becomes a thing of the kindergarten classroom. And I think we need to reframe that as they are concerned about fairness and unfairness and equitable treatment of everyone, and they want people to know what is happening, and they want to make sure they've informed you of this, and they want change to happen. So I think let's leverage those skills. Let's reframe how we're contextualizing that.
I guess Spirit Bear lends himself well to that student-centered approach. So I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about how you've used the Spirit Bear resources in your classrooms, and how the impact that's had on your pedagogy moving forward.
I had a role as a teacher librarian, supporting the entire school, and that Spirit Bear resource, the website and the resources on there, was such an entry point for educators who really didn't have much background or professional learning in that. And by me being able to kind of direct them over there, and it's not, it has resources beyond the early years, obviously, right? It has resources all through. And educators really came back to me afterwards and said, thank you for pointing us there, because it's such a rich source of information for us then to be able to support students through different kinds of conversations.
You both spoke to the point that it's teachers that need to do learning too, right? So I'm glad to hear that those resources were helping teachers expand their knowledge as well. So I wondered if you, in the work that you were doing, did you connect with any First Nations, Inuit, or Métis elders or knowledge keepers? And if you did, how did you go about doing that, and how did that fit into the social justice and equity piece?
In the work that we were doing in our classroom, I know, Lisa, in our other conversation, I had shared with you kind of what sparked this journey for me as an educator and with the students was a conversation, or not a conversation, teachings that knowledge keeper, Anishinaabe knowledge keeper Kim Wheatley had gifted or shared with us. And that sparked my journey. And so we were learning from Kim, but also other knowledge keepers and elders through those Indigenous equity sessions that we were attending. And for us, it was important to center the voices of Indigenous peoples in the learning and conversations that we were doing to inform our kind of journey of teaching and learning. But we knew that us attending sessions and learning, like professional learning, was not the be all and end all of how those voices were going to be centered in this work. So we had reached out to Kim and told her that, or shared with her kind of how her teachings had sparked this whole journey of teaching and learning around truth and reconciliation that we were engaging in. And this is what we were doing. And we had reached out to her and asked her, or invited her, to see the work that we had been doing and to guide us further in that journey and share traditional knowledges with our students. So we were bringing people into the classroom, informing those conversations, sharing traditional knowledges that weren't ours to share with students, and weren't our stories to tell. So we had kind of developed those relationships, and we're conversing with Kim a lot through like written conversations, even though she wasn't coming into our building. So she was guiding our process. There was a school that I worked with who was working with an Elder Gary from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And they had, again, done a lot of the work themselves as a school community, and then had invited him to demonstrate kind of what they were doing and continue to guide that process with them. So I think definitely being in relationship with people and developing those authentic relationships, like Kim was along that journey with our school and with our students, and that was important. But also just thinking about the resources that we're using, and centering like Indigenous authors, Indigenous filmmakers, Indigenous voices in that teaching and learning, I think is an important component as well. Also think as educators, it's critical that we reflect and I'm using we as in every educator, settler or not, around who's sharing knowledge, whether or not it's being appropriated, whose voice is being heard, not heard centered, and how we can do that in a respectful way that does not appropriate knowledge. So I think even as Klara mentioned, recognizing where those curriculum documents are coming from. I think a lot are currently being rewritten to include traditional ways of knowing or things like that. But I think it's also important for us to ask the question of, like, who am I? Where am I in the journey? How can I gauge respectfully? So part of that is developing those relationships, right, with Indigenous people.
The last question I have is just about like any guidance you might give to other kindergarten teachers who are wanting to engage in the work.
In conversations with other educators that I've been able to have, I want to demystify that doing this work is in addition to everything else they need to teach in their curriculums or program documents, because it's not. It's part of every single part of what they do, whether it's math or language or science. It is in it all. So it's not extra, but we have to begin to understand how we can integrate all of this learning together and still be responsive to our students.
I think that as we continue to discover the genocide that's happened in our country through the burial sites at residential schools, this is no longer a point of not being ready to start or not wanting to start or not. This is a non-negotiable. We need to acknowledge that the system that we hold power and space in played a major part in this happening in our country. So it's not optional not to take action. We need to use that power that we do have to create positive impact and change towards truth and reconciliation, or else we are contributing to the problem that's been created in this country largely by our education system. I think the quote for me that holds so true that is Justice Murray Sinclair's quote on education got us into this mess, and education is what will get us out.
Klara and Michelle, thank you so much for this conversation and for all your wisdoms and sharing of the work you've done with your kindergarten students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for having us.
And show you my reality, how hard it's been to be a youth, all alone with plans to dream. I want the world to treat me fair. I deserve a chance to see a place to be eager and have my family close to me.
Then you came and heard my voice. You made us loud and now I can't avoid. We have a heart, we have a dream, nothing left me so we sing the spirit bear, we sing the spirit bear. So we sing the spirit bear, we sing the spirit bear. So we wanna see a world that is fair, where we can dream, where we can share a love we know is there, and sing the spirit there.
I'm about to be brave and to never trust fear. I want to feel safe and I want you all here. We came to celebrate in the name of Spirit Bear. We want you all to listen and the mission is to care. All the children want to share and they really need to change, cause history has shown that we're not treated the same. Believe there is a place where the teachings will be made. Find spirit in your heart when you're speaking on his name.
It's
strong our love is. I have determination. Fight for more fairness. Stand as a nation and join us in caring.
We are strong, we are proud. Learn to love and love loud. Please don't fight, find our light for equal rights.
So sing the spirit.